Hi, this is Jennifer from Read It Again. Join me while I read the first half of The Octopus from the Lighthouse Family series by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Preston McDaniels. Please consider subscribing, and if you enjoyed this book, hit the like button and share this video with all your friends. Chapter 1, The Garden. Perched on an island cliff, high above the deep waters of the ocean, a lighthouse stands steady and strong. Its great lamp shines across the waves day and night, guiding sailors on their journeys home. This lighthouse is well loved, and not only by the sailors who watch carefully for its beacon in the night, it is also well loved by the family who lives there. This is a happy family. Pandora the cat and Siebold the dog are raising 3 mouse children in addition to keeping the light. The children are Whistler, Lila, and baby Tiny. The members of this family somehow found each other in this large, wide world. Pandora had lived 4 lonely years as a lighthouse keeper when she discovered Siebold washed upon her shore, battered by the storm that had tossed him there. Pandora tended Siebold back to health, but just as Siebold was planning his return to the sailor's life, he and Pandora found the children, lost and adrift at sea. The little mice had fled from an orphanage, and like Siebold had been blown by a storm to the sanctuary of Pandora's lighthouse. Within the keeper's cottage, they each found kindness and comfort, and the sudden pleasure of warm food and company. And there, with Pandora, they decided to stay. Even Siebold, the wanderer. A long island winter was behind them now. It was spring again, and so much to do. Spring is a lively time around the lighthouse. Whistler was shaping a bean trellis into the form of a cat, which delighted Pandora. By July, the vines will have grown, said Whistler, and the cat will show nicely. Brilliant, said Siebold. Siebold was busy planting carrots and beets. Siebold didn't much like beets, but he planted them for Lila, who liked to dip the doll clothes she sewed into beet juice to dye them a lovely red. She also used carrot tops to make a nice yellow. Baby Tiny was big enough now to play in the lighthouse yard, but Siebold was so worried a strong gust of wind might blow her off the cliff that he tied her to Pandora's clothesline with a long length of woolen yarn. Tiny happily stacked her wooden blocks and scallop shells and the tiny puffins that Siebold had made. In the fields behind the lighthouse, the wild irises were budding, as were the poppies and primrose and bluebells. And on the dunes, the beach morning glories had begun to creep. In July, when the morning glory vines were thick, Whistler and Lila planned to play hide and seek among the white blossoms. For now, they were happy to concentrate on Pandora's garden. While Whistler constructed his trellis, Lila made beetle houses with small piles of rocks, and she collected fresh water from the rain barrel into shells, placing these near the houses so the beetles might have a drink. Birds, too. Tonight is the full moon, children, said Pandora as she walked through the garden with an apron of mint. Oh, good, said Lila, settling a shell into the ground. Everything will glow. Yes, said Siebold, this moon will also bring the lowest tide of the year. It will? Asked Whistler. Indeed, answered Siebold. There should be new things to see in the estuary when the water pulls back. We should explore, said Lila. Definitely, said Whistler. The children loved walking over the estuary at low tide, making tiny footprints in the mud as they looked at starfish and anemones left behind by the receding water. Tomorrow morning you may pack a bit of breakfast and go out early while Pandora and I trim the wicks, said Siebold. He said this cheerfully, for Siebold quite liked his keeper duties. Tiny will keep us company, won't you, Tiny? Siebold added. The baby smiled at him. Siebold quite liked Tiny, too. He often carried her about as he did his chores, tucking her in the roll of his wool cap or fitting her into his vest pocket. But you must be very cautious, children, said Pandora, pouring the mint from her apron onto a netted screen to dry. You must remember not to turn your back to the sea as you explore the estuary, she said. Always watch for the tide coming in and be sure to return to the shore well ahead of it. We'll be careful, said Whistler. We promise, added Lila. And will you bring back some sugar kelp? Asked Pandora with a smile, for lunch. Of course, said the children. The Lighthouse family loved sugar kelp. Lunch would be wonderful. Chapter 2, To the Shore. Early the next morning, Pandora packed Whistler and Lila's twine bags with gooseberry biscuits, small red apples, and wooden flasks filled with tea. The children pulled on their slickers, and they each kissed Tiny goodbye. Tiny had been watching them from inside a sifter on the kitchen table. Don't forget, reminded Pandora. Never turn our backs to the sea, said Whistler. Right, said Siebold, coming down the steps from the lantern room with several cleaning cloths in his hands. And remember to be quiet and friendly, he added. The tide isn't often this low, so some of the creatures you meet may feel uncertain because they are usually covered by water. We will be as quiet can be, said Lila. I'm sure you will, dears, said Pandora, opening the door for them. Just be home for lunch. Yes, Pandora, said Lila. See you soon, said Whistler. And carrying their breakfast bags, the children headed down to the shore.